everyone, Stephanie here, the Archivist for disability charity Leonard, Cheshire. In this festive episode of the Resonate podcast, I'll be holding your hand as we go through the archives, looking at Christmases past. Christmas was very important to our founder. Did you know he used to send over 4,000 Christmas cards a year? You may not have started your Christmas card list yet, but perhaps this will give you a little bit of inspiration. In this clip from our oral history archive, we have Leonard's secretary Joan, who talks about the mammoth undertaking of writing Leonard's Christmas cards.
Have you heard about the Christmas cards and all that performance that used to go on? It was very, very important for Leonard, Christmas cards. He used to send every year about 3,000 or 4,000 cards. He always liked to keep in touch with not only his friends, but people he had met perhaps only fleetingly at an engagement, or people who had done him a little act of kindness, or had played tennis with him, or had got up at the crack of dawn to drive him to an airport. All these people, he used to take a note of their name or address, and they were put down on the Christmas card list. And not just for the following year, but forevermore. They had cards, and it did mean an awful lot to these people. And so this was a very large job that had to be done every year. It started in August, coded them all, because at the end of each name and address there were little crosses. 3 crosses meant he signed them Leonard, Cheshire and Sue Ryder, and she signed. 2 crosses with Leonard, Cheshire, 1 cross Leonard. Then it was Leonard and Sue. Then, if it was a dash, there was a little personal message that was put in. Some were GC. It was a total nightmare. Anyway, that was very important.
So there you go. If you really wanted to, you could use Leonard's system for signing your Christmas cards, but I doubt anyone nowadays has over 4,000 of them to send. Christmas also appears in some of the stories of our homes. Take St. Teresa's, who had a very interesting first Christmas dinner. In this speech to a community group in Melbourne in the 1970s, Leonard tells the story.
I well remember the day 21 years ago when we had our first Christmas in our first home. We had no means of giving the 8 patients that there were in the home at that time a special Christmas, because we were struggling to keep going and nobody had given us a Christmas box. 2 days before Christmas, a little boy of 11 suddenly turned up with a duck, and he'd won this duck in a raffle. And instead of giving it to his mother or whatever else he might have done with it, he said, I will give it to the patients at St. Teresa's. And so this boy's gift really made their first Christmas dinner. And ever since that day, in one way or another, we have had help from the young. And I would like to say what a difference it makes.
I'm afraid I'll have to correct Leonard there and say that St. Teresa's in Cornwall is actually our second service. This Christmas at St. Teresa's was in 1951, but by 1954 Leonard was in a completely different country celebrating Christmas. He'd just got out of hospital where he'd been treated for TB. When Leonard was in hospital, he received correspondence from all over the world asking him to come and help in their local communities. One country that was especially interested was India, and Leonard was invited out there when he felt better. As soon as he was discharged from hospital, Leonard set sail for India, arriving with his own car and caravan to use as an office, which became quickly impounded and he had to pay a large fine. With no money, Leonard only had a letter of introduction, and he goes on to tell us here in this clip what happened next.
In Bombay, I had just one address that somebody had given to me. This was the wife of the chief engineer at Burma Shell. And she kindly came to meet me. She didn't know what it was all about. And I explained to her and said that I was looking for a property. So obviously this took her by surprise, but she took me out in her car, and eventually we did discover, I think it was an acre and a half of land in the jungle 15 miles north of Bombay. The great advantage was that the owner was prepared to let me have it on a promise to pay when I could. I think that he'd been trying to sell it for a long time and thought that I probably was as good a bet as anybody. We then wanted somewhere, a house, a building. Well, Nina managed to get the main contractor for Burma Shell, who was finishing a contract, to give us his contractor's hut, an asbestos hut. And this he put up on top of this little bit of land over Christmas. So we called it Bethlehem House.
The Christmas theme doesn't stop there. Soon Leonard had 2 residents living with him in the asbestos hut, and him and some helpers were nursing them and trying to get some money together to get things on a firm footing. This is when somebody in the local community suggested that they put on a fundraising pantomime. He explains more in this clip.
We held our first committee meeting on packing cases under the tree. I'd spent half my life around packing cases and rooms that are being built. Now, the one thing that the committee talked about was money. And one of the distinguished Indian ladies said, now look, we have 2 patients, we have no furniture, and we have 35 rupees in the bank. There was about £5 in the bank. What are we going to do? So Nina said, I know, my husband will put on a pantomime. Well, everybody said, very good idea, and I'm convinced that they didn't know what a pantomime was. And of course, Jimmy, Nina's husband, knew nothing about this, and evidently she was waiting for a convenient moment to break the news to him. But the convenient moment didn't somehow come, and at the next meeting we got Jimmy as chairman. And as the meeting was started, one of the Indian ladies jumped up and said, ladies and gentlemen, before we start this meeting, I think we'd like to thank Mr. Carney for agreeing to put on a pantomime. First he'd heard of it. We've always wondered what happened when they got home. But the pantomime was put on, and on one condition. Jimmy said, I insist that you get the governor. We thought, well, what's this pantomime going to be like? But the pantomime went on, and the governor came, and what was more important, the Minister of Finance. And it was the first pantomime being put on in Bombay, and it was so successful that it had to be put on another 4 days after Christmas. And the Minister of Finance, as it happened, had been at school in England, and he'd never seen a pantomime until this day. And he was so pleased with it, as he went out, he said in a very loud voice, if there's anything you want, I hope you'll tell me. And he said it publicly, so that really he was committed. And we said, yes, sir, what we want is a road.
What a way to get things done. The Bombay pantomime became a regular social fixture, and it is one of the things from our 70 plus years of history that I get asked about the most. Most people want photographs of this event because it appeared in all the society pages in the Mumbai press. We do have some, but unfortunately not an awful lot, and neither do we have film, but it was something that was very much celebrated and made a big impact at the time. Adventures with Christmas cards appears to be a theme in our history. In our library shelves we have a blue book called The Story of St. Bridget's Cheshire Home. St. Bridget's was set up in a seaside town down in West Sussex in 1955, and this Christmas card related event was so momentous that it's made itself into this annal of history. Reading directly from the book. An event took place in 1964 which is now amusing but was then catastrophic. A well-intentioned supporter who sent old Christmas cards to St. Bridget's decided on her own initiative to appeal for used cars in Women's Weekly, one of the largest circulation magazines of the time. The following is reproduced courtesy of the Evening Argus, Brighton. When the mailman calls at St. Bridget's Cheshire Home in East Preston, there are no excited people waiting to see who the letters are for. They already know. In the past 10 days, 50 post office lorries have called at the home and dumped over 500 mailbags on the doorstep. When the reporter called at the home, he told the matron that a GPO lorry had just pulled up outside with another 80 mailbags to deliver. She looked around in despair and said, "What? Another lot? I really do not know what we're going to do. We've got 2 million of them already." 2 million what? The reporter asked. "Old Christmas cards," matron replied. It all started about 12 days after the advert. Already one of the garages is bursting at its sides with unopened sacks of mail. Walls in the hallway are lined with parcels up to the ceiling. The linen cupboard has been emptied of linen and completely filled with parcels, and our occupational therapy room has been turned into our gigantic sorting office. The moral of the story is, always obtain committee approval before taking action. Some of the key players in this adventure have left us an oral history interview, and you can hear them laughing about it in this clip.
In the Blue Book there's a funny story talking about post, about Christmas cards, how you got hundreds and thousands.
We did.
How did that happen?
Well, they used to collect the cards and remake them, Nora and Charles, didn't they?
And then my father, not
Van
Trainload.
So millions. Must have been millions.
Yeah, all LOP stay along the hall.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. You couldn't move for Christmas.
What did you do? I mean, did you use them all?
Well, that's what we used
Were they?
They were changed
Oh, wow.
Yes, they were recycled.
Well, it was worth it then.
And Nora and Charles, they worked hard.
They did Christmas cards from morning till night. It was good, isn't it?
So there we have it, direct from residents Eileen and Anne and volunteer Peter, that Nora and Charles, the residents responsible for making Christmas cards every year, recycled every single one of those over 2 million cards to make new Christmas cards. Could we call that a Christmas miracle? Now we've come to the end of our trip through the archives. I hope you are feeling a little bit more festive, and I'd like to wish you from all of us here at the Leonard Cheshire Archive a very restful holiday season and a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you so much for your support listening to our podcast. You can find past episodes by visiting our website www.rewind.leonardcheshire.org, where you can also download a transcript. Resonate is also available on the Anchor app and most other podcast apps.